Hey everybody, David Costello here, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow and host Growing Your Firm. Today's guest is James Rose. He's the co-founder of Content Snare. And if you found yourself being annoyed, anxious, frustrated with chasing down things from clients, he's developed this amazing tool to help with that. We're going to talk a little bit about the software, but we're even going to zoom out. We're going to talk about what does it take to really deliver a great client experience as you're trying to request things from your clients. The clients don't always want to get back to you. The firm maybe doesn't give enough information. We're going to talk about common mistakes and so much more. But first, James, welcome to the show.
David, thanks for having me. It's I'm excited for this.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I don't have the purple lights like you do, but maybe one day I'm going to level up and get them for people watching on YouTube. For folks not familiar with Content Snare at a high level, before we dig into some best practices, what does Content Snare do for the ambitious accounting and bookkeeping firm?
Yeah, I guess it makes it easy for them to collect information and documents from clients. That's the 2-second version. We actually built it for web designers originally, and it turns out everyone's got this problem, especially accountants and bookkeepers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to zoom out, I'd love to start with, this is a problem we've been hearing about since day one, where we try to throw something over the wall to the client doesn't get back to us. We call them, maybe we text them, maybe we email them, maybe we fax them, write them a letter. Please don't write them a letter, but maybe you do that. What are some of the ways, even outside of your software, firms should be thinking about a good client experience when they're trying to ask clients for things or request client information?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing to keep in mind is there's got to be just dead simple for clients. If they're probably, if you're working with business owners, they're going to be, or, even professionals, that they're going to be super busy, just like you, and they don't have the time to work out, systems that are difficult to use, or, like anything that's going to require a lot of work tends to get crammed to the bottom of the pile, because it's just like, that's going to take me too long. I can't do it now. So there are lots of things we could talk about to sort of make that, reduce that load on people. Like just quickly, it's like, make it like a simple workflow for them so that, so they know where to go and what they've got to do. Guide them through the process. So that could be with like images, text, and video, and like break it down into small pieces, and like no logins is a good one as well. Like I know a lot of people use like client portals. They seem to be quite popular in the accounting industry, where people will have like a lot of stuff hidden behind a login. Like I see like some examples might be Citrix share file. I see that getting used a lot. And, I can tell you the client experience for that is really, it's not nice. And people aren't going to go through that process of finding where to upload things or whatever if it's too hard for them. They'll just
isn't the premise, wasn't always the counter argument that's the secure way to do it? I mean, how would you do it securely without a login?
Yeah, okay. So there are ways, and that's what we're trying to build. But so for me to like not plug Content Snare here is going to be fairly difficult. But what I would say you could do is use like something like a file request tool, like maybe Dropbox if you're using one of those kind of things, or meet the client where they are. So, if they've got Google, like we actually use Google and Dropbox and other systems all within our own business, right? So you could essentially create file requests. Obviously it's making it harder for you because you're across multiple systems then, but you need to make this, if you want to get stuff from your client, it's got to be easy for them. So with Content Snare, we have like pin code protection, that kind of stuff. So you can, in some system, depends what system you're using, right? Like some systems will have a pin code ability. What we're working towards in Content Snare is the ability to I guess like hide certain fields once they're uploaded, or once they've uploaded something or typed something in, the client can no longer access it if they've only put in like accessed it via a link. So that way it's secure. They can't see it anymore. Like, or if someone fishes their email and gets access to that link, which is the access to Content Snare link, they can no longer see that information unless like you've logged in and then you can grab it out. If that makes sense. That was a good question, by the way. And I actually don't like, outside of very select products, this is very, very difficult. I just think, then there are products working towards this like ours. And there are possibilities like Dropbox file requests. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but you can say, hey, I need like X amount of files, and you send them a link. The client can upload stuff to that, but they don't believe they can see it anymore once they've done the request.
Yeah.
So there are those kind of things. A form is another option. So, you know, I'm in two minds about this, because this is one of those, like, everyone's familiar with like forms, right? You fill out like a contact form, a bigger version of that you type information into. Once that's submitted, it's like the client can't access it anymore. The downside of forms is that it's all got to be submitted in one go, which can be quite painful for clients, right? That's one of those like big tasks to get put to the bottom of the pile. Because if that's going to take me half an hour to fill out all that form in one go, I'm not going to do that, right? So you kind of need to chunk things up. But if it's a small amount of information that they can submit in 10 minutes or under, is about the benchmark I use, then you can use a form like Typeform, SurveyMonkey, any of those kind of things. And then once they submit that information, it's no longer accessible just through a link, right?
Yeah, and you mentioned something earlier, and I do think it's interesting. The examples you listed up, we'll try to put in the show notes, like Dropbox, request file, or you said forms. But you also mentioned adding, visual assets to make it easier. So images and videos, and so I guess how do you infuse these concepts into like client requests without it being overwhelming? Like, you added 3 videos, you added 17 screenshots. Like, what is the right amount of fidelity, for a client? Or can you really not give enough information? Like, what side of the spectrum are you on?
Yeah, no, you can definitely give too much. Look, I would just put yourself in the client's shoes and think about like what's their level of knowledge, right? Like when you're in an industry for so long, it's pretty easy to forget. They call it the curse of knowledge. I think it's easy to forget like how little other people know who aren't in your industry. So, that's probably where I would start, and just going like, okay, so if I am my client and I've asked them for XYZ document, do they even know where to get XYZ document? Do they know what it looks like? So maybe it's a couple of dot points about where to get it, where it would normally be, and a screenshot of like what it looks like, a sample document or something. Maybe even a little video on like if they've got to log into some kind of tax portal to get it, maybe a little video on like just how to log in and where that would be in there. Like it's only, and you don't want to have a 10-minute video for one document, just short and to the point, as long as it covers, exactly what they've got to do. What you'll actually find, you can start with a small amount of instructions and guidance. And then if you notice clients struggling with that particular element, then you can increase it later. And we've had many customers in Content Snare report that was like a hidden benefit of the platform, because clients can optionally, you can allow clients to ask questions about a certain thing that you need. So it's like a comment system. If you've used Google Docs before, it's kind of like that. There's comments pops out on the side. So if they're like stuck on a question, they can ask you a question there. And if you're getting the same question from several clients, which will happen if they're not sure and they're all getting stuck on the same thing, then you just improve the instructions for that question. So it doesn't have to be like any process. It doesn't have to be perfect from day one.
Yeah. Well, here's kind of a curveball question for you. How much of client request nightmares is the result of improper or poor onboarding? If you nail an onboarding process, you get the logins, you get the information. I don't know if you've ever been asked this, can it cut down half of the chasing you do later in the year? Or is it like, no. Even if you nail onboarding, you're still running this every month. You're still going every quarter, or does it really depend?
Well, you still need different information, right? So like there's obviously the more you can get up front, the better. And, I guess it depends on your processes too. Because for example, my bookkeepers, like at some point, I think they got jack of asking me for stuff, certain things. So they just ask for logins to Stripe or something. And so now they can download exactly what they need directly from Stripe. So is that what you mean by like?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's interesting, right? So that could have been an onboarding, scenario, like where does this information live? And then just asking for logins. But then also part of the request auditing to see if you're doing, if you can run a more efficient firm, could be we can get better instructions, or actually, can we just get the Stripe login, right? And I think there's a balancing act of when it makes sense for the client to deliver something versus when you can remove that friction altogether.
100%. Yeah. And it's going to depend on your business and processes and what you're trying to achieve from your business, whether, that's even an option within your price points, to go and do those things. But yeah, look, there's definitely some things that can be sorted out in onboarding, but I feel like there's always going to be some stuff that you need to manually collect, like that you need clients to manually give you, or like, whether that's typed, they answer some questions, whether it's like queries about categorized transactions or whatever, or documents at the end of the tax year. There's always going to be something that you need. I think a lot of the information collection process can be sorted out with good processes, but sometimes you need you might need a tool to sort of help you.
Yeah, totally. And now you've dealt with a lot of different industries, like even on your website, you mentioned you serve a lot of accountants, a lot of bookkeepers, but there's also web design agencies that use it, mortgage lenders use it. Have you seen any nuanced difference from the demands of what the accounting firms go through versus others? Have you found anything surprising about this industry, or is it like, what, everybody's the same, kind of have the same problem, or is there anything nuanced with accountants?
That's a good question. I like it. So there's definitely differences. It's crazy to me how much overlap there is between basically anyone with clients. So you like you mentioned mortgage, we've got legal, events companies, like anyone that needs information from other people. They all suffer from the same problem with constantly chasing up clients and never getting responses.
People are so difficult, huh?
Oh yeah. And that's why things have just got to be stupidly easy for your clients. You've got to do everything in your power to make it easy if you want to get stuff back on time. But some of the stuff I would say is different for accountants. I mean, tabular data. So, we introduced a table field. Mortgage brokers love that as well. However, scheduled requests are a big one. We don't have that feature yet, but we're working on it. So being able to ask, for this client, we need these 5 things every month, automatically send the request for those 5 things every month. Right now, our workaround is to use Zapier to automatically send those every month. So that's been a big one from accountants. But I will say the biggest thing by far that has come up so much more with accountants than anyone else is security. Very, very security conscious industry. And I mean, even with the integrations, we're talking to Xero, and just to get access to Xero Practice Manager's API is we've got to jump through so many hoops to do that. I was gonna say it's crazy, but it's not. It's data that should be secure. So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing I've noticed. Just a few small features like the other things I mentioned, but yeah, otherwise it's crazy how much overlap there is.
Yeah, you mentioned something, Zapier. For part of the audience, they're gonna thought maybe it was a misspelling or typo, and for others, they'll say, yeah, absolutely, I love Zapier. So for people listening, just get on the same page. What is Zapier? How does it work? How does it work with Content Snare?
Yeah, so it's I guess I'd call it a automation platform. It helps connect different tools. So at a basic level, you can create workflows that says when this happens, do this. So simple examples when someone fills up my contact form, add them to my CRM, and you can connect different apps and different tools. So a lot of people do things when a invoice is signed, or when a quote signed, or when an invoice is paid, you might automatically send a request in Content Snare, your initial onboarding form. So that can help take manual steps out of the process, right? So as soon as engagement letter signed, send the initial request for information, and then you might say when they have finished their request in Content Snare, update their status in my CRM or something like my project management system in Jetpack. You can do that kind of stuff with Zapier. It's we could talk about Zapier all day, but it's such a time-saving tool. If people listening to this haven't checked it out yet, just personally in workflows I've set up, I think I'm at around 120 hours a month saved of if I add up all the tasks it runs for me each month. And
give us a flavor. What are some of the top tasks that come to mind to give people an idea of maybe what they can do?
Yeah, so I mean, there's I use it, a lot of it's for synchronization between tools. So if I need to update a piece of client information in multiple tools, it'll do it for me. I just update it in one place and it gets pushed out everywhere. So that's one workflow kind of says if they're updated here, then update them here and here and here and here and here as well. I use it for my weekly newsletter. So I have a newsletter for accountants and for digital agencies, and I use it to when I'm on a website, there's a Chrome extension, Zapier Chrome extension. I can click a button and it'll take the current article that I'm on and push that into my next newsletter if I think it's going to be helpful for accountants. God, this one's definitely got me on the spot. What else? Every time we have a blog post that goes live on our site, it goes into our content library Airtable, like a spreadsheet. These are just very small things, I'd say.
But the point is, I mean, it's like anytime you're doing something that's very manual, you can just look at a Zapier for it. And I don't want to brush over like the CRM example. So you have a marketing automation platform, ActiveCampaign or HubSpot, but you also have them in QuickBooks. And you also have them in a Google spreadsheet somewhere. And then you also have them in Content Snare or Client Portal, whatever you're using. You also have them in a CRM. You know, you update one and they update all the data fields and all the others. So I think the value prop here is if you're doing something that it takes 30 seconds or a minute, but you're doing it every day or every week, you know, set up something once in 10 minutes and never have to do it again. Ideally.
Yeah, and it adds up. You know, that's the thing. A lot of people are like, oh, this only takes me 30 seconds or a minute. Why would I do it? But you know, it adds up when you've done this like 100 times, you've got 100 workflows going. It adds up so quickly, you know, to the point where you're saving literally over 100 hours a month.
Yeah, I love it. Well, any final tips and reminders before we, you know, if people want to reach out, connect with you, we'll give them a way to do that. But any parting thoughts on the client chase, things for the audience to remember or to avoid at all costs as they're trying to fix their client chase?
Yeah, look, the number one thing I'd always try to keep in mind is just like, is this extremely easy for the client to give me exactly what I need? You know, so it seems easy for a client to respond to an email. Like, and I would say avoid email. Which is what everyone defaults to because it's what everyone knows and they think it's easy for the client. But in reality, like, you know, if you've got 100 or not, like even like 10 questions in an email, it's hard because you have to like try and reply in line. Do you like tab it in and then make the response red? Like, how do you separate the answers and the questions? This is why you're getting a mess back, is because there's no nice way to do it. Like there's no like formula that says this is how you reply to an email with 10 questions in it. And then you got to say, oh, I've attached like 3 documents below. And like, if you're aware of this stuff, like I am, I might say the attachment for this question is named blah, 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 blah. Other people might just throw it in there and it's got some random name. You know, so email is such a mess for this. So I would find another system like a form or like, you know, Content Snare, obviously. But yeah, don't do email. And
I'm so aligned there. Like email is a place where it's just lazy. Like frankly, and I'm not saying we never use email ourselves, right? And we never send it out, but it's like you're in a rush, you shoot the email, but at the end of the day, you want to retain the client. But this could go beyond the client. You could be, you know, like we're all trying to recruit, we're all trying to get great talent. And you send over, you know, this is one of my kind of pet peeves is that's boiling, right? But it's like you send over a PDF attachment that somebody has to then download, and then guess what? Nobody owns Adobe, so then you got to go into like Apple Preview, assuming they have a Mac, and it's like, you know, use DocuSign. You know, if the deal's important, if the candidate's important, make it stupid simple for them to sign and fill it out, because time is not your friend in a lot of these things, right? If you have a dire request as your firm owner and you send it out to your client, maybe they open up the email, they see the 10 questions, they go, oh, all right, I'll just get to this later, right? Or the download and signature and review, oh, I'll just get to it later. And then 3 weeks go by and they forget about it. So I love your point. Anything you can do to reduce the friction, to reduce that pause before they open up Facebook or Twitter or the next emergency goes on, the better.
Yeah, 100%. And on that too, you mentioned like PDFs, like don't ask clients to fill out PDFs. That's like probably the worst. Go email before a PDF. It's I don't know anyone who's ever received a PDF with like form fills on it and gone, oh yes, I can't wait to fill this out. You know, like the PDF filling is the worst.
It doesn't really save. I mean, there's a whole mountain of pain I feel like that lives in PDFs, and so it's my goodness. I think the client experience, anything other than PDFs, is probably a great client experience.
Yeah.
All right, James. So this has been a real treat. We covered some good territory today. If somebody wants to reach out, learn more about Content Snare, spin up a trial. If you do that, what is the best way for them to connect with you or the platform?
It's contentsnare.com you'll find everything you need there. There's a little chat widget in the bottom right hand corner if you have any questions. That comes to me or the team. And if you want to connect on Twitter, it's _Jimmy Rose.
All right, love it so much. And if you couldn't jot down all the notes that James was talking about, it's going to be at jetpackworkflow.com/blog. That's jetpackworkflow.com/blog. We'll link up to Content Snare, some of the points he made about Dropbox and Zapier. If you enjoyed this interview, leave a 5-star review. And if you really enjoyed it, share it with a fellow firm owner that has been complaining about the client chase. It'll mean the world to myself. I know it'll mean the world to James. Thanks again for coming on.
Thanks a lot, David.